So Lupe Fiasco is a pretty interesting cat. He's someone who's always existed kind of on the outskirts of hip-hop as sort of an oddball or an outcast prior to it becoming cool. He was in the same class as Kanye West or Pharrell Williams in the sense that he was one of the first quote-unquote nerds to come out of hip-hop with interests and talking points revolving around education and politics. Fiasco was born with Salu Muhammad Jaco on February 16th, 1982 in Chicago, Illinois. He is of West African descent and was one of 9 children. His mother Shirley was a chef and his father Gregory was an engineer. His parents would eventually divorce when he was 5 years old and he went on to live with his mother, but his father would still be very involved in his upbringing. In 6th grade, he would go on to live with his father full time. Education was a major part of his upbringing as his parents exposed him to a diverse set of subjects. He'd eventually join his school's chess club as well as the academic decathlon. His father was a major influence in his musical palette as he'd ride around with him listening to everything from hip-hop acts such as NWA to old school jazz. In an interview with NPR, Lupe talks about this stating, "I have an understanding of Queen and the way Freddie Mercury did his harmonies. I know what tablas sound like because my father played a lot of Ustad Ali Akbar Khan." I don't know who Ustad Ali Akbar Khan is, but shout out to him. Anyways, Fiasco talks often about the duality of his upbringing as he was exposed to the streets of Chicago as a youth while also being brought up by an educated family. "I always saw 2 sides of life. I saw the dudes who would be the gangsta, big time guys on the block, but would also be dedicated fathers. It was kind of weird to see that dual story that everybody has." Lupe's journey into hip hop began when he was in middle school after hearing Nas's 1996 classic, It Was Written. Before that, Lupe wasn't a huge fan of hip hop due to its messaging and vulgarity, instead opting to listen to jazz musicians such as Benny Goodman. His first rhyme started out as poetry while in high school, and he made a friend who went by the name of Bishop G. As the two shared an interest in music together. Fiasco's father allowed them to make music in his basement, and the two began to build a buzz around the school for music. Early on, Lupe went by the stage names Little Lou, Lou the Underdog, and Young Fiasco. Lou was a nickname given to him by his mother as a shorter version of his birth name. He'd eventually go by the stage name Lupe Fiasco later down the line, taking Lupe from a friend he knew in high school and Fiasco from the song by the firm's Firm Fiasco, basically saying that he liked the way that it looked on paper.
How you doing?
Fine. I was wondering what's so good about the song Firm Fiasco by the Firm?
I like the I was a big Nas fan. I'm still a big Nas fan. And so the Firm was like, you know, it wasn't the greatest album, you know what I'm saying? But they had certain songs where it was dope, especially songs that had Nas on it, because remember every song didn't have Nas on it. And Firm Fiasco was one of the better songs on the album. But it was more, I liked the way that it looked, like the the actual font of Firm Fiasco was fresh. And I was like, yo, that's where I got Fiasco from Lupe Fiasco. And I was like, yo, I like that. I like the way it looks. I'm gonna take that.
Around his junior and senior year of high school, Lupe would meet a group of producers who knew his sister and lived down the street from his mom's house. One day, he went to go pick up his sister, and the producers pulled up and introduced themselves, knowing that he rapped. They would ask him to join them for a showcase going on at Raw Dope Studios, a studio in Chicago that was part of Raw Dope Productions, responsible for acts such as the 90s hip-hop group Crucial Conflict. In attendance at the showcase would be a rep from Aftermath Records known as Big Chuck, the founder of Raw Dope, Shorty Capone, and Charles Chili Patton, who was a friend of theirs.
And the producers who were on that just happened to literally live up the block from my mom on Madison. So that was Alizé and his brother. They were like the producers at Raw Dope. So they knew my sister because they literally lived on the next couple blocks. So they knew my little sister. My little sister, I'm living in Harvey. My dad comes up. I think you heard the story. My dad comes up, tells me go out west, you know. So when I'm out west to pick up my little sister, they pull up and they know me from like being a little rap dude and doing other things. So they like, yo, we doing this showcase at the studio with Aftermath Records. So I go there. Big Chuck, who was working at Aftermath at the time, his Chicago homie is Chill, right? So they like bros. So Chill's there, right? Chill's kind of in the music business, kind of out. He had a little management company called On the Rocks. So that's when I first meet Chill. And that's when it became like, okay, rap. So you got a bunch of niggas in the room rapping, da-da-da-da. That night, they put us all in a group. And that's where you get the pack. or the Wolf Pack.
Chili and Lupe would become close friends after that, and he'd eventually become a crucial piece in Lupe's come up as he lived close to his dad in Harvey, Illinois. But more on that in a bit. That same night after the performance, Rod Dope suggested that they form a group, and that's when the Pack was birthed. It started out with 3 people consisting of Lupe, Butcher, and Navi, and they'd soon add D-Lo, making them a 4-man group. The group began working together and seemed to be under the management of Rod Dope or Chili's management company, although the extent of it isn't clear. The group began showcasing at various labels and was soon offered a deal with Epic Records. In the meantime, Chili would have Lupe battling other rappers around the city and out of town in New York, staying in Jersey or New York City at the time. The Pack only released 1 song officially titled Armpits as the lead single. The group recorded a number of records together and had a rough draft of an album put together, but the group wasn't given any creative control, causing everyone to kind of loathe the project. In an interview with AV Club, he describes this time stating, "The Pack was a group out of Chicago. It was a put together group. We actually met for the first time at this showcase. They were like, yo, you should do a song together. So we did. It just so happened that the name of the song was Wolf Pack. They said, y'all should be a group called The Pack, and here's a record deal." But eventually things quickly fell apart as the A&R that signed them would get fired, causing all the signees to get let go. After being let go from Epic, Lupe and Chili would maintain a close relationship, and the two would build together as Chili thought Lupe had some of the best rhymes he'd ever heard. Chili would go all in with him soon after, dropping his management company, and that's when they created First and 15th Productions. Chili would finance and help manage the operation as he had industry connections and was heavily involved in the streets, while Lupe served as the talent. Lupe continued to record music with the help of Rod Dope producers DJ Marble and Frankie B. Nice, who still had a good relationship with Chili. One of the early records that really got Lupe noticed was the track Could Have Been, a song which described the career options he could have pursued if it weren't for rap.
Real estating, trying to sell you a mansion, a rollerblading, doing 360 flash spins, or I'd probably be flipping a burger, attempting a murder, paralyzed, sipping on Gerber. I could be working at Joe's, chain snatching, jerking your Joe's, homeless, working for food.
The song marked a turning point in his career as this record would get discovered and covered by the MTV series Advanced Warning, a 2000 series about upcoming artists. This exposure eventually led to him getting signed by Arista Records. Sometime in 2001 or 2002, Big Chuck from Aftermath arranged a meeting between Lupe and Jay-Z. Jay was staying at the Peninsula Hotel in Chicago, and Lupe showed up along with his friends, James Lockhart, to rap for him, and Jay was immediately impressed with his skills. Jay quickly grew fond of young Lupe as he reminded a lot of himself.
It's already done. When I went to go see Jay, it was like 2001, maybe 2000, not 2001, maybe like 2002. I took my man James Lockhart, who's out of Cabrini Green, and we went to the Peninsula and fucking knocked on the door, and Jay opened up the door. And I just, he's like, "Come in, niggas." And we just went in there. I just started rapping. He's like, "Let me hear something." Right. And we know Jay comes through from Big Chuck. So Big Chuck is the OG homie. Remember, first time I meet Chill is when I meet Big Chuck at the same time. They homies. So Big Chuck cool with everybody. So he cool with Jay. So it's like, "Hey, Jay, here's Lupe." And Jay was like, "This nigga's nice."
He even had Lupe fly out to Baseline Studios at one point in New York and had him rap in front of him, Young Guru, and DJ Premier. Allegedly, during the meeting, Lupe's beat CD started to skip, and he just went with it, continuing to rap over the skipping beat, and his rhymes blew the room away. After this meeting, Jay offered him a deal to sign with Rockefeller Records. Ultimately, Lupe and Chili had other things in mind, as they already had their own company in First and the 15th, and instead opted for a partnership. Although he didn't sign to him directly, he and Jay still maintained a good relationship. Around this time is when Lupe met Kanye West as well. Lupe claims that they met before West was even signed to Rockefeller, after Kanye produced Beanie Siegel's The Truth. Momentum continued to build as F&F, short for First and the 15th, would sign new acts such as Stack Bundles and Gemini, along with a number of producers. Chili even bought a house in the suburbs of Chicago for the label to work out of. Soon, the track Could Have Been would be heard by L.A. Reid, and that's when he offered Lupe a deal to sign to Arista Records. While at Arista, he used his connections there to help Kanye prior to signing his deal with Rockefeller. Lupe arranged a meeting for West to meet with L.A. Reid, and it was during this meeting where Reid infamously told Ye to stick to making beats.
Understand, I've been knowing Ye for a long ass time, right? I remember first meeting Ye when he first did The Truth for Beans, right? And we did a symposium together or some shit. there's like a little speaking thing, I think at Columbia College. And this one, I think the nigga had a fro and some other shit. It was weird. But but I was working with Ye for years, right? So I got Ye joints, right?
Right. Like Birds and the Bees and those like songs that never.
And I remember Ye used to come up to the crib and like, man, what you think about this? What you think about this verse, right? And like he'll spit like verses and shit. And be in New York, like when I remember Ye did we brought Ye into Arista to showcase for LA Reid before Rock, right? And like Stack Bundles was sitting there, motherfucking. So imagine it's me, Stack Bundles, and Kanye, LA Reid in the office, and Ye fucking died. And when he left, no, when he stopped, LA was like, yo, you should stick to making music. You stick to making beats.
Oh,
real shit, right? Real shit.
Towards the end of 2001, Lupe's first official mixtape would be released called the FNF Mixtape Volume 1, consisting of him and other FNF artists. So it's now 2003. Lupe's career has been on a steady upward trajectory up until this point, now signed to Arista and fully ingrained within the industry, but things would unfortunately take a drastic turn when Chilli's house would get raided. In May of 2003, police raided the home of Charles Chilli Patton, finding 6 kilos of heroin in a storage unit. The street value of the stash was worth a reported $1 million, and they suspected him to be running a drug enterprise to fund First and the 15th Entertainment. The police were wiretapping his phone and went in for the bust a month later. Chilli, his wife, Lupe, and others were arrested, and police confiscated their studios, cars, and jewelry. Lupe would be the only one that was acquitted, and it has been heavily implied throughout the years, including by Lupe himself, that Chilli ended up taking the rap for him, as he may have allegedly been involved in the operation. Particularly on his second mixtape called Lupe Fiasco, The Future, he has a song called Free Chilli Freestyle, where Lupe alludes to making money from both rap and the drug game, blatantly saying that Chilli took the rap from him.
Just a little, it's a little bit. Okay, G.I. Joe. OUP, Impera. You know how we do. First stand. First stand 15. It all rhymes. Say word to the nigga that took the rap from me. Chill, I will. Take rap to where niggas can't conceive. To the point where niggas can't agree on which song is best. And the argument is if I am better than me.
Chilli in the end would end up getting sentenced to 44 years in prison, but ended up getting out early as he was released just last year. Despite the hardships from Chilli getting locked up, FNF was still able to gain major achievements as producers from the label. The Buchanans secured placements with What More Can I Say on Jay-Z's The Black Album, as well as a placement with the song Hip Hop Star off of Beyonce's hit album Dangerously in Love. Prior to Chilli's arrest, Lupe already laid down most of the groundwork for his classic project, Food and Liquor, but towards the end of its completion, A&R LA Reid was let go from Arista. By March of 2004, Sony and BMG had merged, causing Arista to dissolve, and in turn, Lupe and FNF were dropped. After getting dropped, multiple labels were interested in acquiring Lupe and FNF. That's when Mark Pitts, who was an A&R at Arista, told Lupe to follow him to Atlantic. Also during that time, Jay-Z told Chilli while he was in jail that he was in the midst of becoming president there and he wanted Lupe to come with him. Craig Coleman, the chairman over at Atlantic, even went to the county jail to speak with Chilli about the deal. So all of this was enough incentive for Lupe to agree to join the label. Although initially they didn't want to take an advance, Lupe did so anyway so he could bail out Chilli. But soon after joining the label, Jay broke the news to them that he would instead be taking over as president of Def Jam as Rockefeller began to deteriorate, and they were offering him his masters back. However, he would still remain an executive producer of his album. After joining Atlantic, Lupe would release his first well-known mixtape, gaining most of its notoriety by word of mouth, Fahrenheit 115, The Truth Is Among Us. This mixtape consisted of old songs done under Arista along with some new freestyles. In 2005, Fiasco released the mixtapes Revenge of the Nerds and A Rhyming Ape. His remix of Kanye West Diamonds from Sierra Leone, titled Conflict Diamonds, caught the attention of Kanye West, and this led to Fiasco's feature on Touch the Sky in 2006. Then a few months later, Lupe would release the first single off Food and Liquor, Kick Push. This single is when I first heard of Lupe personally, and the record became a cult classic. The song describes a love story between a male and female misfit skateboarders. The song was very unique for its era because talking about skateboarding was really only done by Pharrell prior to that time. The album would officially drop on September 19, 2006, featuring production from the likes of Kanye West, the Neptunes, and Prolific, among others. The record was led by 3 singles, Kick Push, I Gotcha, and Daydreamin', and would get nominated for 3 Grammy Awards. He would make the cover of the 2007 XXL Freshman cover and was voted Breakout Man of the Year by GQ. So now Lupe was riding high from the success of his debut, and he officially announced his second album, Liqour. But while recording, he would again face adversity when his father passed away from type 2 diabetes, and Chili would officially get convicted from his pending drug case. On top of that, his friend and fellow collaborator Stack Bundles would be killed while in New York. These events obviously greatly affected him and were subsequent themes throughout the record. Liqour was led by the tracks Hip Hop Saved My Life, Paris Tokyo, and Dumb It Down. The album would go on to sell 143,000 copies first week. Around 2010, Lupe was in the process of completing his 3rd studio album, Lasers, and was waiting on a release date from Atlantic. However, Atlantic wasn't content with the project as it lacked commercial singles. The label thus began to serve Lupe pre-recorded radio-friendly records for him to record verses over, to which he obliged. But then the label still wasn't content with the songs, essentially shelving the album in the process. These songs given to Lupe would actually end up being given to B.O.B., and they were the absolute smash hits Nothing on You and Airplanes, which is kind of crazy to think about. I'll leave Lupe's versions in the description. On top of that, this was a time that was pretty tumultuous politically, and Lupe, who has always been outspoken, started making very controversial takes, such as calling Obama a terrorist and being outspoken about Palestine, to name a few. Lasers even came with a manifesto that he created that carried anti-capitalist and anti-establishment undertones. At this point, he was battling tooth and nail with Atlantic for control over his music. His fans really showed out in support as they would organize a protest and march down to Warner, who owns Atlantic, and demanded that Lasers get a release date, starting an online petition, in the process getting thousands of signatures. Dior Cohen even came outside to greet fans with a boombox playing The Show Goes On, reassuring protesters that the album would indeed come out. More than 2 years after the album's completion, Lasers was finally released on March 8th, 2011, debuting at #1 on Billboard, selling over 200,000 copies first week. Despite its commercial success, Lasers would receive mixed reviews from critics, and even Lupe had mixed feelings about the project himself due to how difficult it was to release. And since the release of Lasers, Lupe would release a number of projects since, including Food and Liquor 2, Testuo and Youth, Dragus Light and Dragus Wave, Drill Music in Zion, and lastly Samurai, last year in 2024. A lot of these projects are honestly some of his most highly regarded amongst rap fans, and it's apparent that Lupe is doing pretty well, still creating great music. He has always provided strong commentary on social issues and still provides great intellectual depth within his work.